Yes, hello, hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello? Hello, 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 can you hear me? Okay, that's fine. So, microphone is working, this is working here. Yes, hello? Okay, you can hear me now. Let's see. Okay, you can hear me now. Let's see. Okay, so let me just confirm that. Okay, you can hear me now. Let's see. Okay, so let me just confirm that. Okay, you can hear me now. Let's see. Okay, so let me just confirm that. Okay, you can hear me now. Let's see. Okay, so let me just confirm that. Okay, you can hear me now. Let's see. Okay, so let me just confirm that. Okay, you can hear me now. Let's see. Okay, so let me just confirm that. Okay, you can hear me now. Let's see. Okay, so let me just confirm that. Yes, I've muted that. Is there any, has it changed? Is there any change? Can you hear me? Okay. The noise is still there. Oh. Yes, I did that. Okay, fine. So let's see how it goes now. Yeah. So can you check if it is better? Yes, can you check if it is better? Yes, hello, hello, hello. Yeah, can you check if it is better? You reloaded the page. There's no feedback again. So I can start now. Okay, that's good. Dear friends, dear colleagues, I must apologize for the technical hitch that we had at the beginning. We are not in 100% control of technology. So once again, I welcome you most sincerely to this third in the series of webinars that is organized by the Association for the Development of Education in Africa, ADEA, its working group on higher education, under the auspices of the Association of African Universities, AAU, that is facilitated by TEDx Africa. In my view, it is not that because I'm part of this. I think it's the most important webinar because it has to do with money. In my place, they say when money is not there, nothing else talks. So when money talks, a lot of things are fixed. That is not to say that financing or funding is the one and only important factor, but it's one of the very few important factors in quality higher education in Africa. The coordinator or the moderator of this webinar is Madam Dlamini, who is the director of the ICT services and knowledge management in AAU. I'm Peter Okebukola. I work in Lagos State University, and I have a lot of interest in funding higher education in Africa. You get to know my interest as we progress. What do we want you to do? We want you to be able to type your comments and questions in the comments box. You see, I'm going to be presenting for about 30-40 minutes. And during the course of my presentation, I will be happy if you're sending your comments. I don't know much. You know it all. So together, you and I will be able to come up with some models that African governments can benefit from in terms of funding and financing higher education in Africa. You can join the conversation also with the Twitter handle hashtag WGHET Talks. WGHET Talks. That's a Twitter handle. Please join the conversation, send in your comments, send in your questions, and we'll be able to respond during the question and answer session. So what are we here to do? We are here to share experiences on financing model for higher education in Africa. I've tried to modify that title a little bit by putting it as funding and financing models, not model, for higher education in Africa. So in the next couple of minutes, I will be making a presentation on using this following sequence. I'll begin with some historical antecedents to where we are today. And then I will look at where we are today with regard to funding or financing higher education in Africa. And I will look at different funding scenarios. So you're going to see what we can call a gap analysis. And then we'll look at the impact of the funding models on higher education in our continent, in our region, Africa. And the last, but definitely not the least, but the very important component of it is what can we do? What are the other sustainable models that we can apply to improve funding and financing and help and enhance quality higher education in Africa? You will notice that I've been using the word funding, I've been using the word financing. You see, there's a thin line of difference between funding and financing. Funding is when you get a grant, let's say from government, that will grant from government. I'm sorry, I lost power there. So that is something that is typical for most parts of Africa. But the power will soon come on, and you'll see me. But let me just keep making my presentation as I go along. So funding is when some money is made available by the organization for the higher education institution, and that's like a grant, which is free of charge. You don't need to pay back the capital. So government will give some money, you have endowment, you have public donations, and all of that. What about financing? Financing, on the other hand, is the amount of money that is provided like capital to an organization that you require that the institution will repay that money. So it's like a loan, and you have to pay back the capital grant as well as you pay back the capital as well as some interest. So funding, you get the money, no payback. Financing, you get some money and you are expected to pay back capital and interest. Now, there is a book which is, if you like, our webinar book, the book that like it, if you like, the textbook for this webinar. Is entitled Towards Innovative Models for Funding Higher Education in Africa. So this is the, if you like, our course textbook. And good news for you, everybody who is participating in this webinar will be entitled to a copy. I've had assurance that the electronic version of this book will be available on the AAU website in a few days, and so you can download. It's in English as well as in French. So let's go on to the historical antecedents of funding. Of funding higher education in Africa. Now, before independence, especially around the pre-1960s, you have what can be labeled as colonial funding. Colonial funding model meant that the colonial master made available money by way of grant to the very few universities or higher education institutions that we had at that time, and demanded that some fees be paid. So together, the managers of these higher education institutions like University of Ibadan, Legon, Makerere, and all of that were able to mobilize the resources from these sources to implement or deliver the curriculum. Now, after independence, the leaders of many African governments saw the need to have many more of the citizenry take on higher education. So they lowered the barrier to access, and the funds from government hiked beyond what the colonial government was providing, and the tuition. So money from government went up, money from other sources like tuition, kept coming down. And at some point, you had many countries in Africa post-independence say that higher education is free. So you now had a model where I'm not going to get now into the public good and private good argument, but post-independence, African governments largely looked at higher education as public good, that the dividends of higher education will come to the society rather than to the individual. But that is changing. Now, over the last 15 years, my dear friends, my dear colleagues, African countries on the average allocated about 0.7% of GDP, gross domestic product, to higher education. And within the education envelope, education budget, about 20% was allocated to higher education. That is the growth, that is the regional picture. But this is not commensurate with the total number of students that were pursuing higher education, which galloped in terms of proportion about 3 times. So we had in 1991 about 2.7 million students enrolled in African higher education. By 2015, last year, we had 13.1. So that gives us an annual average of 16%. So that tripled, but sadly, the money coming to higher education did not match that growth rate. And it's just merely the public resources allocated to current expenditure in that sector only doubled, just an average of about 6%. So still talking about antecedents and where we are. Now, Africa accounts for about 0.6% of the global gross expenditure on research and development. What does that mean? It means that less than 1% of the global expenditure, that is, if you put all the money that goes into research and development in the world together, Africa accounts for just some little number, and that has an impact on our contribution to research. Less than 2% of the world researchers and about 1.5% of the world's share of scientific publications were provided by sub-Saharan Africa countries in 2014. I am not happy about that. Now, if you look at what you can call gap analysis in terms of public expenditure per student, you see, I've been looking at the gross picture regionally. Now, let's look at some individual countries. Some countries are expending a lot more per student than several others. And by 2010, or the closest year, we had Swaziland, spend about the highest sum in terms of public expenditure per student. Lesotho, good. Botswana, Malawi, Namibia. I'm going now from left and I'm going towards the area. Congo, Democratic Republic, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Guinea, Madagascar, Togo. They are on the other end. So we're having this picture globally. And I will now look at what we consider to be major challenges facing funding of higher education in Africa. I'm still going to be talking about financing. Financing is when you get some loan that you have to pay back. Let me take this opportunity to appreciate and thank most sincerely all those organizations, multilateral, bilateral, that have been supporting Africa. I know some of them are participating in this webinar in terms of financing us. The World Bank has been quite exemplary in providing funds for the system. As I said, I've introduced myself as I go along. Now, I was 15 years ago the Executive Secretary of the National Universities Commission that takes charge of all the universities in the whole of Nigeria, and that is the most expansive in the whole of Africa. What I do, I get money from government to subvent the universities, and the World Bank, will come to our aid. USAID, several of these other organizations will come to our aid to give us some facility to deliver the thing. So we have challenges because enrollment growth has outpaced the funding capabilities. And worse still, there's insufficient application of funds by both the government and the higher education institutions to drive quality university education. So all of this sum up to mean that there's increasing decline in public expenditure, per student, and research and research and quality investment are largely underfunded. I'm quoting Shabani 2013 and Okebukola 2014 now. So let's go on very quickly to look at case studies addressing these challenges. And I'm going to, as soon as I finish the case studies, I'll go very quickly through them. You'll find these case studies in this book, which you are all going to get. This book, Towards Innovative Models for Funding Higher Education in Africa. The case studies of Ghana, of Kenya, of Sierra Leone, of Nigeria, of Senegal, and South Africa. 5 countries. We have the case studies in this book. So I will just give you the highlights, the summary of what they say. Let's take the case of Ghana, which was reported by Emmanuel Newman and Mahama Duweja. Now, by the way, I have some power challenge that has come back now. So in Ghana, you have a combination of earmarked grants, for higher education and then performance funding. And then you have the Ghana Education Trust Fund, GET Fund, which provides tremendous support. I've had interactions with Ghanaian Vice Chancellors, and they are full of praises for GET Fund. You also have in Ghana student loans and bursaries, which are all part. The student loan is part of financing because the student will have to pay back the loan, and then you have bursaries. Let's go to Kenya. Kenya has a narration by Crispus Kiamba. Crispus Kiamba used to be the executive, that's my counterpart in Kenya, the executive secretary of the Council for Higher Education in Kenya. And he reports on the Universities Act 2012, which has established the University Fund. The University Fund is a facility, is a fund for driving, teaching, research, and community service and other activities in the university. You get details of this in the book that you have. Let's come to my country, Nigeria. We have 2 systems. We have what we call the envelope system and then TED Fund, wonderful TED Fund. How does the envelope system work? The envelope system works like this. The higher education institution that is funded by, say, government and public, we have 2 levels there. You have the federal level and then you have the state level, the states. Now, either of these 2 proprietors will give an envelope, will give, this is how much I can afford. You require 2 billion naira to run your university for this year. I can afford only 1.5 billion. This is my envelope. You take it, and then you look for the rest. So I said the Nigerian system is envelope system plus TED Fund. We have a tertiary education trust fund, which was established following a 1992 discussion, and it was originally Education Trust Fund, and only just recently, a couple of years ago, transited to Tertiary Education Trust Fund to address tertiary education only in Nigeria. Tertiary education only. So TED Fund provides a lot of resources for capital development, for capacity building, for journal production, and all manner of academic related expenses for the university. But of course, if the university requires 2 billion naira for a year, Government gives 1.5 billion naira for the year. Third fund may give like about 300 million, and then the balance of 200 million the university has to source for it through tuition and several others. Let's get on to Senegal, where Ben Sikina Tugebaye has reported in this book. Senegal has come up with what they call performance contract funding. And I find this to be elegant. I find this to be apt, appropriate, and it's transparent. It is accountability is built into it. Details you can also find in that book. Now let's go to South Africa. In South Africa, Basi Antia has has documented what the funding models are like in that rainbow country, wonderful country. And let me give you the general features for South Africa. It is goal-oriented and performance-related. Now, government grants are distributed to institutions according to national goals and approved institutional plans, and payment for services and outputs. It is also improvement-oriented. So rather than being punitive, it has instruments to encourage improvements when targets are not met. The new funding framework in higher education has some other subsystems, National System for Innovation, especially the NRF, which confirmed that internationally, government allocations to the higher education sector consist of 1. Block grants based on formulas to support teaching, research, and other operational costs, allocations to support loan schemes for students, and ad hoc, earmarked, and or competitive allocations. Now, the funding in theoretical perspective will mean of the three major funding approaches, we have incremental funding. Incremental funding, line item, historical adjustments to previous year's allocation for all specific line items, and you get other details from this book. Now, I'd like to mention the existence of the Association of African Higher Education Financing Agencies, AHEFA for short. I was with them in Cape Coast last year, where I discussed some of these models, and I found that association, which is an organization of those agencies in different African countries that are into financial education, especially through loans and bursaries. You have good practice in a number of African countries, especially in Eastern Africa, Southern Africa, and Ghana. In Nigeria, we used to have a very good student loan scheme, but a couple of logistical challenges led that the scheme should be put on hold. Now, I like to underline some intervention funds for higher education in Africa. I mentioned them earlier. TED Fund in Nigeria, GET Fund in Ghana, and many other countries are signing up to these intervention funds. How do they work? Quite simple. You get the companies that are registered in the country pay in part of their gross income. Gross income to the GET Fund or to the TED Fund, to whatever name that the funding for intervention fund is called. And that intervention fund in turn will develop some parameters, some guidelines for intervening in the higher education system. Let me give you the example of Nigeria, as I mentioned that earlier. So the fund will intervene in capital development because the Nigerian government at the state or federal level will focus largely on personnel costs. Personnel costs will mean pay salaries. So salaries are centrally paid. They give you some little money for running costs, and then the capital grant is not substantial. So TED Fund kicks in and provides a lot of funding for every university, every public university, to put up buildings, to maintain equipment, to maintain plants and machinery, and also for research and development. Now, let's go on to the last part of my first phase of interaction. And that has to be, meantime, please be preparing in another 8 minutes or so for the Q&A session. The Q&A session, I'll be taking your questions. Your questions will be relayed to me by the organizers based in Accra, and I will be sharing my thoughts on the answers. And any of you that will have some richer insights into this can also contribute. As I said, this webinar is for you, is for me, for us to learn how we can do it better. So there are some models that have evolved from my study of the Africa region in terms of funding. We've reported 5 case studies in this book. I've done 20 other case studies of how higher education in Africa is funded or financed and what modifications we need to make to improve the delivery. I'll be looking at 4 models. The first is performance-based funding model, which is gaining traction in many African countries. The other is access equity cost sharing model. The third is contextualized formula funding model. And the fourth, which we'll be sharing with you, will be host proprietor university user funding model. I will tell you where these have been applied and what successes, the merits and demerits, and at the end of it, we all come together to say, yes, for Africa, this is a model that we will need to present. But first thing first, for all the models, one thing that is important, that I found that is important in deriving the cost of running a university or a polytechnic or whatever higher education institution is the unit cost. How much does it cost to train a university student in Ghana, in Senegal, in Gabon, in Angola, wherever? How much does it cost to train a university student? That is the first step in the entire process. So how do you get that? There's a formula which you're going to find in this book, which we have used very successfully in Nigeria in determining unit cost. That means to train a student in medicine, it's not generic across the universities, but you take a student in medicine. How much does it cost to train that student in medicine in 2016 or in 2017? How much does it cost to train a student in education or in history or in engineering? So you get that unit cost. Let me now share with you the okay. Yeah, somebody's asking. I'll get to the questions in a minute. Somebody's asking where the book can be obtained. I will let you know. It's free. It's free. I got clearance from the leadership of AAU that the book will be available in electronic form on the site in about 2 days, and you all should go to the site of AAU and download your copy. You will be glad you did. So in Nigeria, we have our 2014 unit cost we have for undergraduate programs in administration, in the arts, in agriculture, in education, in engineering, in environmental sciences, in law, and all of that. So if you know the unit cost for training these students, now I've done something for the Nigerian government in the last 1 week. That is unit cost of training. On the average unit cost is about 800,000 naira. So if the National Universities Commission now tells the universities, we have 143 universities in Nigeria today, you should enroll 500,000 students for 2016-2017. So by 800, if you are going to say 800, then you are going to have it as 4 trillion naira to train these students in the Nigerian university system for 2016-2017. The same applies to any country in Africa. If you take Senegal, if you know the number of students that are there, and you're able to determine the unit cost, it's just a simple product. This times this will give you that cost. So who pays for that cost? And I'm going to tell you how we have progressed in Nigeria. And so when you determine the unit cost of university education, you are now able to get the total cost. So let's look at how these models fit into the concept of unit cost and total cost. The first one, as I mentioned, is performance-based funding. Performance-based funding rewards universities for efficiency in teaching, research, and community service. And it encourages competition among universities, and this will stimulate evolution of centers of excellence. I've been told by Madam Dlamini that there are some centers of excellence that are participating in this webinar. I'd be glad to have your views on this performance-based funding. But I tell you, many African countries are pushing towards performance-based funding. It makes funding allocation more transparent and more competitive through redistributive funding formula mainly based on performance. So if you are doing well, it's just like I say in my place, it is the child who raises his or her hand that the parent will carry. But if you go see a child, the child is looking, doesn't show any evidence of being helped. So those that are doing well, you support them in improving towards excellence. Those that are not doing well, you still support them. But when they see that the other institutions are doing better on account, that are doing better are being so rewarded, it motivates them. So I have a formula here, which you also find in this book, that we have derived for performance-based funding, also derived from exemplary practices all over Africa. If I can give you BGU is equal to CCX times 6.60 and all of that. Don't let me bore you with it. You're going to get this, all of the formula in the book. And I'm going to let you also know, among the four, what do vice chancellors in the in the African universities, because I did a survey of these four funding models, and I'm going to share with you the results of that survey. The next one, we're almost there, is access equity cost sharing model. Now, this model demands the lowering of financial barriers to higher education while ensuring equity in sharing of the funding burden by different stakeholders based on ability to pay. What does this mean? It means that you want the son or daughter of a rich man to come to the university. You also want the son or daughter of a poor man like me, to come to the university. So how do you then differentiate? By the socioeconomic stratum to which the child belongs, the student belongs, you can you apply this cost sharing model. So the child from a more affluent home will have to pay a little bit more, and those that are not so will they have to get that. That's where financing comes in now. They have to be given some bursaries and some loans to be able to offset the cost of offset tuition. Let's go to the third one, contextualized formula funding model. Now, this one recognizes the factors of individual peculiarities and current state of physical development of a university. I'm going to use a Nigerian example. You find the University of Ibadan, that's our number one university, number one in the sense that it was the first, it's our premier university. On account of the age of the University of Ibadan, you will expect that the plant and machinery, the infrastructure will have been decayed, and so it will need a lot more money for maintenance, a lot more money for the elevation of its physical infrastructure. You also expect that University of Ibadan will have the highest number of professors. So the money that Ibadan will require will be more than the money that a university like Lagos State University established in 1983. Ibadan was established in 1945, will require. So you have to contextualize the funding. And in contextualizing the funding, then the differentiation will not come in. The formula for doing this is not also too stiff. calculate total funding need of each university, UTFN, and through a series of consultative processes with each public university using the formula. There's a formula here too for deriving that model. So we ask vice chancellors, how does this model fit at the previous one? Now let's go to the last one, the host proprietor university user funding model. That is the last one. Now, this model implicates all beneficiaries of the location and service of the university in contributing to funding the university. So recall that I mentioned that unit cost is important, and then you're able to know how much it will cost to run the university in a particular location. Now, where the university is located, let's take Cape Coast. Let's take a university. Let me give you a quick example that I've applied this in this setting. I was the chairman of council of Osun State University, and when we were to tinker a little bit with the fees, I then said to it was a public university, that look, where Osun State University is located, that's in Osogbo. The Osogbo people will have to contribute something towards the maintenance. That's a host proprietor component of it. You have to contribute something towards the development of this university. Let's take Lagos State University, where I work. You have to ask Lagos State, the Lagos State people, contribute towards development of this university. And it's just not through advocacy or begging people. It is something that is by law. So how did we do it in Osun State University? What we did was, I had to take a bill to the House of Assembly, to Parliament in Osun State, that every local government where Osun State is located should contribute towards funding the university. And so what did we get? We got an approval. The thing became a law that every local government in the state should give us 10% of every monthly allocation that they were getting. So what happened? We now had a basket containing the money from the state government, a basket containing the money from all the local governments. So had the host proprietor, the host, showing a lot of interest, and that helped tremendously to improve the funding of Osun State University as a model that is now widely practiced in a number of universities in Nigeria. So what do the vice chancellors say? Now, in terms of ranking, because I asked them to pick that's all over Africa, pick the funding model that they will prefer for their university. And they have performance-based funding coming out as number one. And coming as number two is a blend. They said, no, you can't have performance-based funding alone. It's a blend of performance-based funding and the host proprietor university user funding model. So the combination of the two, performance-based funding and the host community contributing to development of the university is the second. I've underscored the role of the Association of African Higher Education Financing Agencies. They are helping to talk about financing now. So a university or a higher education institution requires X amount of money, let's say in US dollars, let's say $200,000 US. We talk about funding. That's money that you get from government or from endowment or from anywhere in the public as free in the sense that you don't have to pay back. So you get, out of $200,000, you now get about $150,000. So you have need to go for financing. You have need to go to an institution like a bank, World Bank, or any of the local banks around you to get some money that you have to pay back capital, very good interest rate though, and interest at some point. So financing higher education in Africa has taken is taking an interesting turn, in the sense that government grant is diminishing by the day on account of the unfavorable economic climate. In Nigeria today, we are in recession. Many African countries are unable to also provide enough grants. There are some countries in Africa that higher education is free almost all the way through. I think Malawi is one. And look at South Africa. South Africa, great country, is having the conflict or challenge of the students saying, oh no, we can't, no to capping of, no to increasing fees. So we have that challenge in Africa on account of government not having enough resources, to enough grants for the higher education system. So financing now comes in here. Financing will mean getting financial institutions to further support the development of higher education, and taking that along with tuition. People want to run away from tuition. African leaders don't have the courage, political will to say, yes, I can afford to give you all the money you require. If I go to take a facility from a bank, it's going to be, I can't even afford that. So I can't afford all of that. So why don't you, as students, pay, let's have some slight increase in tuition. But what you get is riot all over the place. I think there should be more dialogue on this, more consultations for both government, parents, students, all stakeholders to recognize that funding higher education in Africa is everybody's business. It's not only the business of government. I recall that when I was Executive Secretary, National Universities Commission, as I said 15 years ago, I walked up to our president, President Obasanjo, and said, look, come, let's have an increase in tuition. And the president at that Obasanjo would tell me, no, don't increase tuition. Whatever you need, you just come and they will get it appropriated. And he did that. During his tenure, when I was in office, he significantly increased the welfare scheme. Salaries of university teachers increased tremendously. He gave us money to running costs, height, went up, several percentage points. But that is those days. But now the realities are coming home to roost that you cannot all make it free. So our students, our parents must recognize that if you want quality university education, if you want African universities to be better ranked globally, then everybody must make some sacrifice. Government must continue to provide substantial funding for higher education. Financing from our partners should also be part of the equation. The students should also recognize that, no, they need to put in a little bit more money. Now, we'll now stop for now. I'll stop for now and then take some questions that are coming in. Now, I can see quite a lot of questions that are here. Let's take Kwame Fanta. Where can I get a book? Yes, I've indicated that you get a book from just a minute now. From the website of Association of African Universities. Madam Dlamini, who heads the ICT services and knowledge management, will put it up and we'll all download it for free. The other question is, could you please clarify the modus operandi of TED Fund vis-a-vis allocation of funds for training of staff in tertiary institutions in Nigeria? Yes, I can do that. What TED Fund does is it has a formula that is applicable to all universities, all polytechnics, and all colleges of education. Those are the three clusters of institutions in the higher education subsector in Nigeria. So it will say, I'm going to give you X amount of money for capital development. So show me your strategic plan for developing some physical structures in your university. Now go through a due process of advertising and awarding the contract. The next is, I'm going to give you some money for research. And that money, I think, is about 50 million naira. So that money is for every university. Every university will get the same amount of money. Now, you ask about allocation of funds for training. Now, research and training, I think, for training is, I don't know the exact amount, but there's some percentage also for training. So if I want to go for a conference in New York or in Pretoria or in Accra, and I want to use the TED fund money, I will apply to my university, because every university every year has that allocation for it. So I apply to my university, Lagos State University, and I say, look, I want to go for this conference, and the committee in charge of evaluating the proposals for training will then look at it. Okay, fine, I've not got one last year. I didn't get another one. Okay, fine, I'm due for this. So you don't ask for no objection from TED fund, and the money is allocated to me. So that is the answer to that. Question from Katia, Marisa, Madeira, Dumoras. I would like to know which model have the better level of success as applicable with the best result in African countries. This is a great question. Great question. As I said, I threw out this model to almost like 85 vice chancellors, so rectors, so presidents of Nigeria, of Africa universities. I asked them, no, look at this. I mean, what will you say? First, I tried out the model with Nigerian vice chancellors before throwing it open regionally. Let me give you the regional picture. I'm just repeating because I said it earlier. For a regional picture, you will get most of them. About 80% of the vice chancellors rank like this. They want performance-based funding. Fund me based on how I'm able to do, how I'm able to deliver on teaching, on research, on community service, and all other ancillary things. Fund me on that basis. So you have to have some assessment for performance. On the basis of that, apply the grant. There's a formula for that performance-based funding, and it is done successfully in Senegal. It's done successfully also in South Africa alongside some combination of other models. So it is working quite well. Advantage is that it will let the institution that has done well and is getting better grants do better still. And the institution that is not doing so well, it will let that institution wake up from its slumber. The second one that I like is a combination of performance-based with getting the host community to support the university development. I gave the example of Nigeria, of Osun State University. Let's take like Cape Coast, rest of Cape Coast, UCC, a great institution. So Cape Coast, I don't know what the community is supporting the university with, but that model demands that by law, Cape Coast will be giving some grant to that university, Cape Coast government. I'm sorry, I'm not too conversant with the architecture of the governance structure that's, but the government where Cape Coast is located will have to support the university by statutorily some amount. For us in Nigeria, for Osun State University and several universities there, you get about 10% of local government contributing to the system. Richard Edema, what costs count in the unique cost? Seems easy, but did not want to take this for granted. Yes, I like that. I'm so delighted about this question too. Now, the cost will include everything. Every cost is factored into it. The cost of the teaching, and the teaching cost will include the cost of paying all the professors, the cost of the infrastructure for delivery, the cost of the consumables for teaching, and it takes on the cost also of research. It takes all the cost, some of the running cost, some elements running to the running cost. If you can see this, I have in this book the determination of the unit cost. You got to get it here. You got to get it in this book. So make sure 2 days from now you go to the website of AAU. Madame Dlamini will be glad to share this with everybody. So you get what goes into the unit cost. We do that every year. In 2001, when I was Executive Secretary of National Universities Commission, and I then had to go to the president, I need X amount of money, and he said, how do can he give me half? And I said, no. And I showed very scientifically how that money was derived based on unit cost. So that's how we started on this unit cost thing in Nigeria. Also on the side, I'm the chairman of council of a number of universities in Nigeria concurrently, by the way. And whenever council is the policy-making superintending body of the university. And I always tell the proprietor, either private or public, that based on this unit cost, this is how much we need to run the university to deliver quality education. So you're going to get the full details here. Piyushi Kwete charts the access equity sharing model, the dominant model in Africa. No, it is not. It is not the dominant model. It's not the dominant model because it is on account of the ability, on account of having data, correct data, to determine whether you are from an affluent home or not so affluent home. I'm sorry to give you this personal example. My last son, who was in the University of Lagos to read medicine, when they had some facility to give to people, to give to the medical students, that's about, let's see now, about 18 years ago, he then showed up and he said, because he filled a form that he will be needing the amount of money because it's not that his parents are not that affluent, and were it not for his name, that's Okebukola, he would have gone through with it. But many of the students in Africa, by the time you say there's a facility for people who are indigent, everybody will say they are indigent. So the access equity cost sharing model can hardly be a dominant model in Africa because you do not have the data, the statistics to show who is of the higher socioeconomic status, parents with high socioeconomic status, and those with low. Emmanuel Mumuni, very educated webinar going on here with Peter Okebukola on the topic, the financing. Oh, thank you very much. Comment is trending on Twitter now. Thank you. Eric Gankam. Do you have some experiences of financial models based on innovation produced and sold through the transfer office at the university? Yes, I have some experiences here in the financial funding models based on innovation. Of course, also financial models based on innovation. You see, I like going back to history because in my practical exam, my experience, that's what you asked for. Now, in 2002, we had the World Bank approach the Nigerian government that they want to support innovation in universities. And we came up with this Nigerian University System Innovation Project, NUSIP. They want to innovate in ICT delivery. They want to innovate in terms of research. They want to innovate in terms of teaching. And so we took that's now financing. We now have to work to take in that money to enable us improve ICT. And I tell you, that facility that we received from the World Bank at that time was a good lever for propelling the Nigerian university system to fairly great heights in terms of ICT literacy, ICT delivery. So it helped innovation. It also helped innovation in terms of teaching. Now, by 2002, when we were able to get this grant and some others, or this facility and some others, we established what is called a virtual institute for higher education pedagogy. That was innovative at that time. We wanted to make available to all university teachers pedagogic skills, and we delivered it very successfully. we scaled up to the Virtual Institute for Higher Education in Africa, VHEF. And the good news for everybody is that by January 1st, 2017, God keeping us, January 1st, 2017, mark your calendar and please enroll. We're going to be running the Virtual Institute for Higher Education in Africa, a rebranded edition. And that's going to be talking about all manner, developing knowledge and skills of everybody, all stakeholders in higher education in Africa in several areas. So that has been it. And he said through the transfer office at the university. Yes, of course, the transfer office of the university, technical transfer office of the university, plays a very important role in that exercise. Question from Claudia Fritel. What are your views on free higher education by events in South Africa? This is a very good question. And it's one of the, I really thank Claudia, Dr. Claudia Fritel, for asking this question. Now, my personal view is that free higher education, if a country can afford it, it's good. But I see that whenever something is free, students hardly show diligence, hardly show commitment to that free thing. If a country cannot afford it, so let there be a discussion that, you see, I cannot afford free education because of this, I have these other sectors. We know education is important, we know higher education is super important, but we cannot afford it. So you have to pay. Funding higher education is everybody's business, and it cannot be all free. By the way, a number of Scandinavian countries have education free at all levels. Malawi, I'm told, has, I need to check that, free up to university level. And many countries, many Francophone countries, run free education. But we need to now see whether there is quality coming out of that. My view, again, is that if you want quality, you've got to let some people pay for it. Students will have to pay something that they will need, that will ginger them to be serious. So back to the South African example, I cannot now make some statement for South Africa, but for Nigeria, I can say that we cannot have free education all the way to the university level. Even if it's a token, the students should be able to pay to pay something. I hope I've addressed Claudia's concern there. Violet Makuku, Dr. Violet Makuku is a quality assurance expert. I greet you. I think there's need for revolving funds for education students from all stakeholders, including industry. Students can start paying back once they are gainfully employed. It does work to some extent due to low graduate employability. I agree with that. But let me tell you the Nigeria example, the Nigerian case study. We had this in the early 80s, 1980s. We had a student loan scheme. We say, okay, fine. Let's have some revolving fund. You take this money, go to University of Ibadan, or go to Ahmadu Bello University, or go wherever. Go and do your education. When you finish, come and pay back. Did you know that less than 0.1% paid back? That facility folded up. So it didn't revolve. No revolving there. And what did the student say? The student said, oh, this part of our national cake. You are eating your own national cake in Abuja, that's our capital, or in Lagos when it was there. And this money you are giving to us is a national cake. They are not paying back. And you cannot even trace them. That's what I said about statistics, about data. They will give you fake addresses. They will give you fake parents' names and occupation and all of that. So it's difficult to trace. I'm not too sure that we have scaled that hurdle yet. But it's a good, in theory, it is a good, Dr. Violet Makuku, it is very good. Have a revolving fund and let people come access it, students come access it, pay back after this thing. But, excuse me, maybe over time, we're going to get this act all done. Next question is from Simbarashe Zinorev, I'm so sorry if I pronounce your last name wrongly, but please pardon me. Access equity cost sharing model. You mentioned the local governments contribute 10%. Is there a way we can include the private sector, not only financially, but tying this contribution to curriculum development? I need to appreciate the organizers of this webinar. I'm getting some very exciting, questions just like this and like the others I've heard. Now you see, the private sector is not left out. Let's take Osun State University that I mentioned. I was chairman of council. We'll get that 10% for the local government. Additional to that, we'll go to TED Fund. TED Fund will also give us our own allocation. So we put all of these things in a pot, and whatever the differential is in with regard to the total cost of running the university, we then ask parents, come and pay the difference. That is, the students will have to pay the difference. So private sector helps through direct contribution to TED Fund. But according to you here, tie this contribution to curriculum development. Yes, the contribution to TED Fund is not necessarily tied to curriculum development. It's tied to physical development, ties to curriculum development, tied to research, supporting publication, supporting capacity building. But some very creative, innovative vice chancellors still go out there to meet with the private sector again, that on top of that, come and help our university. We have examples are replete in the Nigerian university system of such progressive vice chancellors who have been able to win the hearts of the private sector. Hiba Ahmed, are there any experiences in employing public-private partnerships to upgrade infrastructure in African higher education? Examples are plentiful all over the continent. In Ghana, in Sierra Leone, in Nigeria, Liberia, Southern Africa, every sub-region, every country has the example. What does it mean? It means you want to build hostels, and you say, okay, the private sector, come partner with me to put up the hostel, and we build, you operate, and then transfer to us. Or we jointly provide the funds, we put up the infrastructure for hostel or for ICT development or for classrooms, of whatever within the mandate of the university, and there'll be cost sharing of profit. So we have examples there. If you go to any Nigerian university, you'll be able to see this private sector partnership with universities in hostel development, in development of classrooms, buildings, senate, halls of several lecture theaters, and all of that. So the examples are there. Pivushi Kotecha, the precondition, just a minute, that means this one. Yes. Richard Edema, what is the best way to present how university human resource development activities impact development? Is it contribution to GDP? Well, there are several matrices for that. How university human resource development activities impact development. The product of the university, let's take a graduate. The graduate goes into the system and is employed by the private sector or by public sector, or is self-employed, and it contributes to the economy of this. So that's one metrics, although it's rather complex in terms of measurement. The other one is research. Now, human resource development, you develop, the university teacher is able to do research and is able to find vaccines for all manner of things, or contribute to research in the place. So these are some. I'm not too sure. Like I said, I don't have answers to all the questions. I'm not too sure that the contribution to GDP, I don't know the arithmetic or the formula for that, but I'm sure that it will have these elements I just mentioned factored into the contribution. It is getting hard to convince government to invest in higher education. What is the best way? Interesting. In Nigeria, what we have found, although that's a very crude way, the Nigerian university system has suffered on account of strikes. The staff unions will go on strike because they think that African leaders don't like soft hand. They like hard hand, meaning that they want to be, in quotes now, be beaten into line. So when you go to the African government with dialogue, oh, come and increase funding for university education or higher education, they hardly listen. But when you now do it by arm twisting them, they do that. So it now behoves our government. It now behoves all of us to keep telling our governments to put their money where their mouth, where the mouth is, rather than get us to go on strikes. You see, in Nigeria, the improvement in funding of universities has been due largely to actions of what we call ALUTA, that strikes by student unions and staff unions. So the best way to convince government to invest in higher education is to continue to dialogue with them and occasionally use some strong arm tactics. Don't tell them. Use some strong arm tactics, but not the one that will cause the university to go or strike endlessly. So I will tell the way you can also do that is to get the people on top of them. What I mean by people on top of them is the African Union, for instance, that is the umbrella organization, can be used as a lever for convincing the governments that they represent to invest more in higher education. But when that's the last point I'm going to make on that question. When we don't do well on the ranking schemes, also on the side, I'm part of ranking universities globally. We have Times Higher Education ranking, we have Webometrics ranking, we have the academic ranking of world universities. In all of this, aside from South Africa, most African countries are down in the league tables. Many people don't like league tables. That's their own, because league tables are here to stay. They will not run away. They will not. They will not go away. I'm sorry, I lost light again, but it will come back. So most African governments will say, "Oh, you are not well ranked in the on the league tables." But if you do a correlation between the countries that are well ranked and the investment in higher education, like South Africa, you find a direct correlation. So we must continue to tell our governments to make efforts to improve, to invest more in higher education, so that our productivity, our respectability in a globalized world will be enhanced. Now, I take Piyushi Kotecha. The preconditions for a performance-based model may be worth elucidating. Yes, let me elucidate the preconditions for performance-based model. The main criterion is that you will have performed well on some indicators of quality teaching. Sorry, light is back. I'm sorry. That is the major challenge in Africa. Light challenge keeps going on and off. Now, you would need to say, for graduate production, you got to have this number of quality graduates. How you measure that is also another matter to be produced. You need to have your research that is addressing national problems, research that you have published in reputable outlets, and you need to have served your community. Now, these are the three main functions of the university. So on those three functions, your performance is now measured and rated. It's quantifiable. You quantify this, and then on that basis, you will then say, I have this amount of money. It goes to this university if you attain this level of performance. So that's how it goes. And if you don't attain that level, you don't get that amount of money. So at the beginning of the year, you just see a university A, smiling away with huge amount of money because it has performed well in teaching, in research, community service, grade output, and all of that. And another one, feeling so bad because it has not performed well. So the managers of that system will have to come back and say, oh my, we've got to now look at where we have failed. We are not doing well in the quality of our graduates. So they will now work on that system. So overall, it leads to improvement in the efficiency of the university. The geopolitical, that's also Piyushi Kotecha. The geopolitical socioeconomic conditions in South Africa, as well as a weak post-structural layer, mitigates against this model in South Africa. Students are questioning the corruption bailout level. Oh yes, I agree with you. And it also applies in Nigeria. When you say students should do on that model, they will say, there's a lot of corruption going on within the university. Now, what has happened in Nigeria is that 4 years ago, I was asked to lead a team. We have an organization that is that's a national organization. It's called the Independent Corrupt Practices and Allied Offenses Commission. That organization decided to focus its anti-corruption lens on universities in Nigeria. And I was asked to lead a team that will go investigate corruption in our universities. Of course, we had all manner of issues raised on corruption in the system. So that is what students are saying. Corruption in the system, corruption nationally, so corruption everywhere. Students are questioning, so that is very right. But that being said, if we cannot wish away corruption tomorrow within the university, I'm sorry about the light interruption, but we'll be steady soon. And if you cannot wish away corruption at the national level tomorrow, so we must not now keep poor quality university education, constant. So we must be able to collectively agree on how we want the model that is best suited for our own context. As I said, the word I'm closing, I'll let you know that the models that I've shared with you are models we have solved people all over Africa, and the models are showing that no one model fits every country. So you are right there. Now, Chijike Nduko, why is it that many public universities in Africa don't have endowments? Wonderful. We are working on Africa Universities Fund USA to help create awareness and raise funds to support public universities in Africa. Do you think this will help? Yes, sir, Dr. Nduku, this would definitely help. And then I tell you why they cannot get endowments. 15 years ago, up to about 10 years ago, I got this facility from the American government. I used to take 12 vice chancellors as ESN, Executive Secretary, National Universities Commission, to American universities to see how they are funded, to see how they are run, to do some kind of gap analysis between where Nigeria is and where American universities are. So what did we find regarding endowments? You see, the typical people outside Africa, especially Europe and North America, are willing to endow. They endow, bequeath family inheritance, bequeath what they own, and to people, to agencies, institutions that they know will need the money. But the culture of endowment, my dear Dr. Nduku, in Africa is weak. That culture is very, very weak. You get all those big people, they have millions and billions of money in US dollars. They'll take the money to buy houses in Dubai, buy houses in Europe and North America and everywhere. And when they die, the money dies there. Of course, because they have stolen the money, largely. So I think that your effort is praiseworthy. You must continue to promote awareness of the citizenry in Africa about endowment. That is something that would live long after them. But good news for you is that in many universities, we have a lot of endowments. Endowments of professorial chairs, endowment of buildings, endowment of scholarships. Several endowments are all going on now. But when you add them all up, they are not up to just a little. So when I took these vice chancellors to Harvard and MIT, we're told that their endowment in Harvard at that time was much more than, you see, because I was responsible for paying for funding these universities. And what the president of Harvard told us at that time is that the endowment, when we looked at what I was giving to the universities in Nigeria, it was just like a small fraction of what one university has by way of endowment in the US. So please keep on the good work we are doing, and we'll be glad you did. Piyushi Kotecha, students in South Africa are at the forefront for free higher education. The states in the corner. The 2016 and 07 academic years are in jeopardy. Massification with decreased levels of funding, structural inequality, and the lack of prioritization of higher education by government is crippling higher education. Yes, see, the story in South Africa is true for many countries in Africa. The students will say, we want free education. We are not going to pay anything because government, we know you have the money hidden somewhere, and that's where you are chopping the money. That's corruption. So what I think we must do, and I like the word massification, many more students are coming into the system, and the funding, that's one of the challenges that I highlighted at the beginning of this webinar. Many of, we have like tripling of enrollment, and that's not matching the funding. And as you stated, structural inequality, lack of prioritization of higher education by government is crippling higher education. Yes, it is. We must all continue to discuss and debate these topics and ensure that our government will put the money where the mouth is. Oh, Ghulam, oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm so delighted to have Ghulam Mohammed Bai. By the way, Ghulam Mohammed Bai is one of the leading lights of higher education in Africa. He used to be the Vice Chancellor of the University of Mauritius for about 10 years and president of, so many. He was Secretary General of AAU. We are glad to have you, Ghulam. Private higher education is becoming increasingly important. Should governments encourage more private universities? Oh, yes, government should encourage more private universities. I give you the Nigerian case study. We have 143 universities in Nigeria. About 60, not about, 62 are privately owned, and they are doing exceptionally well. You see, it is, I'm taking your question, Ghulam, with that of Piyushi Kotecha. These students who will say, oh, we want free education. In Nigeria, these students will attend primary schools, and their parents will pay 1.3 million naira. And they go to secondary schools, their parents will pay maybe like 1.8 million naira. And they will come to the university. The university is saying, come pay only 20,000 naira. And they will say, no, they are not going to pay. So there is some distortion here. So the same students, when they cannot get, they will now go to private universities and pay, quite something substantial. I am the chairman board of trustees of Caleb University in Nigeria. I am the chairman of council of Crawford University in Nigeria. And we know the kind of quality that we deliver based on the money that our students are paid. So, Ghulam, government should continue to encourage more private universities. The important thing, though, as a quality assurance practitioner, is that we must keep our eyes on the quality board. Many private universities, if the quality assurance agency or regulator looks the other way, they will commit some manner of atrocities in the place by way of depressing quality. So, in one breath, encourage more private universities. In another breath, ensure that you tighten the quality assurance operations. Simba Rashe Zinoreva, does Nigerian higher education sector keep track financial data for the sector? Yes, I have. I have the latest financial data. If you go to this book, you find up to 2015. We have financial data that you can take from there. If so, does the data contribute to the formulations or reviewing of these financial models? Oh, yes, of course. As I said, based on my study, I'll be able to send some position paper to government that are shared with the Association of Vice Chancellors of Nigeria Universities, and that is being looked at. Oh, Pascal. That's Pascal from Finland. Pascal, it was good you hosted us in Finland, and I can see you are doing well there. While seizing this opportunity to greet you from Finland, I want to thank you for your immense efforts to modernize higher education in Africa. I don't have a question, but just to add a comment. Yes. Now, Pascal's comments are many things are happening. Africa's higher education is modernizing so fast, and people want explanations for whatever funding approaches they adopt. To this effect, I would like to add that the economics behind the financing models are very important. Thank you very much, Pascal. Pascal is in higher education management, funding, and all of that. He's a globally renowned expert. He's from Cameroon, and we will take your recommendations there. So that's all the questions that I have at the moment, and I'd like to thank you all. I may now need to go back to a summary of our thoughts. We have, during the course of this webinar, looked at the, just a minute now, that looked at the historical antecedents of the funding models that we have today. And we have been able to look at the different scenarios. And I shared with you case studies from Ghana in alphabetical order, from Ghana, from Kenya, from Nigeria, my great country, from Senegal, and from South Africa. And we have also been able to look at the challenges facing education, higher education in Africa, based on the different funding models. And we proposed the 4 of these funding models, and I also concluded by saying that many of the vice chancellors would like the performance-based funding model. And we reflected during the question and answer session on the matter of free education. You know, this is a matter that is undergirded by philosophy of education being public good or education being private good. What does that say? Education as public good, that philosophy says that, look, if you educate, that education is the key lever for development. So if you educate your citizenry, it comes back, it's public good. Everybody in the country, everybody in Nigeria or in South Africa or in the whole place will benefit from that from that investment. Education as private good looks at it almost like the opposite. That, oh, if I educate you, then you'll become a big man, and the money that you'll be getting as a result of your enhanced status will go to you as a person or to your immediate family. But you see, whether to the immediate family or it also goes back to the central pool. And in driving these two philosophies, the trend is that for basic education as running, when I say the trend, I mean most countries in the world. There are 199 or so countries in the world. Most countries in the world, that's about above 70%, will say for basic education, that is, you come into primary school free, you come into secondary school free. Well, that's public good, because when you finish secondary school, you are good, you are trained enough to be able to offer service to the community. And then if you, in quotes now, using the Nigeria example, if you full enough, then you now want to go to the university, to higher education, not completely exhaustive. Yeah, sorry, I missed. Okay, it's not completely exhaustive. So you have some private good that is. Yeah, I'm just trying to get this technology back. So anyway, that's where we are at. I would like to let me just pause a minute to get this thing back on screen or on stream. Yeah, let's assume that you are reading me loud and clear. We looked at the different funding scenarios, and I concluded by saying that for whatever scenario that you take, whatever model that you take, it is dependent on your context. You don't look at another person's farm and say, yes, this is how I want my farm to be. We don't want to look at Finland, where Pascal Doe is from, to say, yes, it's free all the way through, and then you must adopt it in Nigeria, South Africa, or wherever else. Recall that in Finland, or some of these other countries, they pay quite a lot of tax, and the tax net takes in almost everybody. In my country, Nigeria, many people escape the tax net. So the money coming in that can be used to drive free education is limited. So until such a day dawns when people can come in the tax net and you can get a corpus of money, some substantial amount of money to be able to deliver education free, I think funding education should be everybody's business. Let me see now. Yeah, okay. Now, the last point I'd like to underline is that this conversation, we must continue it in our different countries, must continue to find models that best suit our contexts. Ghulam Mohammed Bai is from Great Mauritius. Great Mauritius is lovely, lovely country, lovely island, and it will just look at all the different models and be able to suggest based on their context. And by the way, the contexts keep shifting. The context for tomorrow in Nigeria will be different from what we have today, because we're in recession now. Our president, Muhammadu Buhari, great man, says we'll soon get out of recession. In recession, the amount of money that you need to fund higher education may not come. The amount of money from government may not be as much as you have. If you have time, please look at my video on running a university on lean budget. I think that's very important for all the managers of higher education system at this stage. Just go to Google and just type Peter Okebukola running a university on lean budget. And you're able to see my survey all across Africa about how vice chancellors who have successfully practiced this have run it. So I'd like to thank you all for being part of this webinar. I've enjoyed the contributions from you all. I've enjoyed the suggestions that you made. Would like to thank the Association for Development of Education in Africa, ADEA, and especially its working group in higher education for mounting this series of webinars. I'd like to assure you that the next webinar that you will see me on, the technology will be much improved. We are developing some platform that will amaze you, that will make the interaction between you and I more fluid and more constructive. We'd like to thank the the Secretary General of AAU, Professor Tene Ehile, who was Vice Minister, was Deputy Minister of Health in his country, and was 10 years Vice Chancellor. Very good credentials. We thank you for setting up these webinars through the AAU, ADIA Working Group on Higher Education, and to thank Madam Dlamini, the Director of ICT Services and Knowledge Development, for inviting me and others to be part of this webinar. From me in Lagos, Lagos is a very, very small city, very small. We have just 20 million people in this our Lagos, 20 million. That's like a few countries, pulled together in Africa. It's a great city. From me, it is bye for now. Thank you for your participation.